the only show focused on the people leading innovation in Orange County. Join our host, Kerry Ransom, in his conversations with the trendsetters, entrepreneurs, investors, and leaders here, because it's time to Accelerate OC.
Good morning. Welcome to Accelerate OC. I'm Kerry Ransom, and thanks always to our engineer, Paul, for making me and my guests sound so good. Today's episode is sponsored by OC4 Ventures, which is a new venture studio that I'm a part of here in Orange County. And we are identifying the most exciting and promising tech entrepreneurs, much like my guests today, here in Orange County, and supporting them with a whole array of things from capital, coaching, collisions with the great talent that's here in Orange County, and connecting them into this community. If you are, or you know one of those entrepreneurs, send them my way, or you can find us at oc4v.com. I am super excited to finally, Lori and I had to do some calendar alignment a couple times, but I'm super excited to have Lori Torres here with me today. And before we get to hear from her and her amazing story and journey with PARCEL Pending, let me first tell you a little bit about her. So she's currently the CEO of as I mentioned, a company called PARCEL Pending, which she founded several years ago. She founded it in 2013, and she grew the company over that short period of time to over 150 people and thousands of customers across North America. And at the beginning of this year, back in January, she sold it to a public company called NeoPost, a global company that's based in Paris. And so we're going to talk all about that journey today. Prior to that, she was an executive for a considerable amount of time at the Irvine Company, a company that almost anyone who lives in Orange County is very familiar with. And she oversaw a huge apartment portfolio as her last role and much of her tenure there at the Irvine Company. And prior to that, she had a very successful career in the commercial real estate industry. And so we'll talk about that transition from that into becoming an entrepreneur as well. She has a great story for Orange County entrepreneurs because she also raised a significant amount of her early capital from a number of local investors, including several folks in Tech Coast Angels and many of my friends who were very happy with her as well. And they were greatly rewarded when she sold the company back in January. And so I look at this as the ideal story that we want to continue to develop and produce more of here in Orange County. A great entrepreneur, a great group of local investors involved, and a support system to make and help her be successful. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. She's learned a ton. I've had the chance to spend a little time with her, and she shared some of that. And she's continued to grow the company post-acquisition. And so we'll talk as well about life inside a big company, which I can absolutely relate to after an acquisition. So as I said, Lori is a great example of a world-class entrepreneur and leader here in our community, accelerating things in her business and her industry and here in Orange County. So good to have you here, Lori. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Great. Well, let's get to the starting line. Please tell us the short version, I guess, of the PARCEL Pending story and how you came to starting it.
Sure. So first off, PARCEL Pending, for those that don't know, we have electronic smart lockers. So it allows couriers to put a package into a locker, sends a notification to the recipient. You can now get your stuff at your convenience, and it's safe and secure. And so I started the company because I was, as you mentioned, at the Irvine Company, and I was running about 44,000 apartment units. And I'd go out to the properties, and I always asked, what's your biggest challenge? And for years, it was the buildings falling apart, or budget, everything. And it started to be, I have a package problem. And the package problem was so out of control that the staff started asking for more headcount, bigger package rooms, construction to do package rooms. And I thought, that's just nuts. We can solve it. I'm a solution finder. Just figure it out. So I started putting my brain to it and thinking about how I could solve it with technology. And funny enough, I was like, wait a minute, I think I have something here. And then I was like, wait a second, I think I have something for the industry that I could actually take to the market. And so I decided to quit my fancy corporate America job. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy and insane. And I decided to make that huge leap after I'm a corporate America gal, actually, 30 years in corporate America, and then not an entrepreneur. But people always said you're entrepreneurial, and I didn't know what that meant, but I guess they were right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you saw the solution. How much market research did you do before you said, as you said, I think I have something here. Did you go out first and look and see? It's surely somebody else has already developed this, and we could buy it as the Irvine company, and you just didn't find it?
I didn't find it. Yeah,
Yes.
I talked to some people. It was funny because unless you were going out to the real estate, you didn't know you had a problem. I was with a bunch of executives at a board meeting for the apartment industry, and we were sitting at the bar, of course, and talking about what the big challenges that were coming our way in the next year. And they were talking about everything from legislative issues to, smoke-free apartments and pets. And I said, we have a package problem coming. And they were like, what are you talking about, Laurie? They had no clue. And it's just because I saw it. So when I saw the problem, I heard about it. I said, okay, how can we solve it? And I looked out there to see if there was anything that could solve it, and I just didn't find anything. And so I thought, I'll build it.
That's amazing. So how you'd been in commercial real estate? I've maybe to a fault criticized the amazing number of people we have here in commercial real estate for being somewhat technology Luddites.
Yes.
How comfortable did you feel like you had to get with how much technology was going to have to be built? And then how did you go about figuring out how to get that done?
Yeah. So, it was interesting because at the Irvine company, I was the one who worked with our IT team on different initiatives, anything that related to the apartment group. And so as I, started realizing you really can solve almost anything with technology. I'm not smart enough I don't write code. I don't know how to read
Nor do I.
code. And, but I was smart enough to go, okay, if they can figure it out and I know what my needs are, we can make this work. And so that's exactly what I did. So I have zero technology background, but I just knew that there was something that I could figure out. And so I found local folks to write the software. I decided to outsource it, and so that I wasn't going to bring a team on early on. I had to minimum viable product, get to the market, and so I just figured out what I needed. I thought about the architecture of the platform that we were building, and then went to China and figured out manufacturing. And it was crazy. I went to China, and people said to me at different manufacturers, "Why are you here alone? Women don't come here, and women certainly don't come here alone. Even men don't come alone." And but I think I was just young and dumb, young in not age, but really in experience. And I just figured it out. I'm just a solution finder, so you go figure that stuff out. Same with the technology, and I found amazing people that would help me, and I could pick people's brains. I have no problem asking for help, and so I just there was just advisor after advisor that has helped me on this journey.
That's amazing. And we're going to get back to that because I think that is a hallmark of a great entrepreneur, but not nearly as common as it should be. So I want to get back to that in a minute. So how much upfront work did you do both before you quit? I guess the first question. And then secondly, before you decided I need to go actually raise some capital for this business.
Yeah, so I bootstrapped my way in the beginning. I'm a saver, and so I saved money, and but I also worked like mad. And so once I realized I really had something, and I realized it was time for me to make the exit from the Irvine company, I had started making the investment into the company. And the first thing I did, though, let me just step back. I wrote a business plan. I am so anti not have a business plan. Now, maybe that's my real estate background, and some entrepreneurs are like, I never wrote a business plan.
And describe what is it like 25-page kind of thing?
Well, there's a great template on score.org that I tell everyone to use. It's a 75-page document. You don't end up filling it all out. And no one saw it. I never shared it with anyone. But it got my brain thinking about every aspect of a business that I could. And then I wrote a 3-year forecast and projections, and I ran it by 2 different CFOs to make sure I really had something, because I think too many people start a company and they don't even know if it's going to be, can it be profitable? Does it make sense? So I really spent the time. It was painful. I didn't spend money on anything. I didn't come up with a company name. It's so funny. I didn't even have a company name until one day a gal that I'd worked with at Irvine company called, and she said, "Hey, this company wants you to come meet with them about your product." And I was like, "Great." I had to get a business card. I had to name the company. I wasn't that far along yet. And so you just make it work.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes that gun to your head like that.
Exactly.
Or a meeting. I mean, I remember having a conference about 5 months down the line several years ago, and I went to my team and I said, I want to have on an iPad a workable product when I walk in that conference that I can demo and figure it out. That's right. And we did. And we did. That's
exactly
right. So sometimes that urgency that works. That's great. So tell me about the journey of building it, and then I mentioned in your intro that you sold the company in January. So let's go through a little bit the process. So
Sure.
you go to China, you figure out how to get it built. I'm sure you've had multiple versions
Yes.
of the product and the lockers. Walk me through the growth journey.
Sure.
over
So
those-
the funny thing is, I think back to the very, very beginning. I was in this little tiny room. We called it the casita outside of our house, and just me. I'd come from Irvine Company. I had every resource
Yes.
on the planet. I had analysts, attorneys, everything, and then it's me. And I realized if I don't get out of bed each day
right.
and make this happen, this will not happen.
right.
And so, as I think back now, I look at we have over 200 employees today,
That's
and I walk through the building, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been a crazy journey for sure. And so, again, that plan that I wrote was so helpful because it really was my roadmap and my guide to get me to where I got to. I mean, I was clear from the beginning I was going to sell the company. I thought that it would be 7 years, 5 to 7 years, and when we sold the company, I thought we were still 18 to 24 months out, so things happened faster. Everything for me happens faster, though. My fundraising happened faster than expected. My exit happened faster. And, everything just moves really quickly. We closed our deal from letter of intent to money in the bank was 32 days. It was insane.
Amazing.
I know, it was really crazy. But my fundraise was the same way. When we raised money with Tech Coast Angels, they had a bit of a reputation of not funding folks and that it would take a long, long time. That's changed. They've really worked hard at changing that image. And mine was 7 weeks from pre-screen to money in my bank. It was amazing how
That is
fast
amazing.
it moved. And so it was a great success story for all on that topic.
And did you raise capital from multiple of the Tech Coast Angel chapters?
Yeah, we did. There were a couple people in. We had a total of 27 investors in the round. So we came up with a term sheet, and then there were some folks, some high net worth individuals in Newport Beach that weren't part of TCA, but they came in on the round as well. And so we were oversubscribed, which was great. I was like, I think I only want to raise $750,000, and then it ended up being over $1.3 million. And it's funny. I would say to entrepreneurs, make sure you raise enough money.
Yes.
I had someone say to me, I've never met a company that had enough cash, and it's so true. You never have enough cash, so raise the money.
That's right.
So journey-wise, I guess, I'm not sure I completely answered your question,
Sure.
but it's been a quick journey, but a very clear and focused and intentional journey.
So as you think about first customers, for example,
Yep.
I mean, that was obviously a key part. You get the product.
Yep.
Was Irvine Company your first customer?
No.
Yes. So you sought out some other first customers. Did you naturally grow with some larger multifamily asset owners, or did you start with smaller kind of mom and pop owners and grow from there?
Yeah.
Because obviously the customer growth was significant because that's what allowed you to
Right.
sell it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I did not. So what happened was I had our first customer, which was Shea Properties, and they were awesome. They let us put the prototype in. They were a fantastic partner with me to let me, be on their property. And at that point, I didn't even know if the couriers would use the lockers. It was all an assumption. I didn't go to the couriers and ask in advance. I mean, it was my assumption was that they're going door to door to every apartment. So why wouldn't they come to the lockers? Why wouldn't
way
they use
easier.
them? And so there was some resistance, but we got them on board. And sorry,
That's okay. Just the growth journey with customers.
with the customers, yeah. So they were the first one, and then what happened next was our second sale was in Florida, and I had my investors say, try to stick to California. You can't in the real estate market because what happens is an owner owns assets in multiple states, and so we were immediately all across the United States, and you just couldn't focus it. And we went with the large institutional companies and single developers and mom and pop. So really all over.
Sure. And what did you not expect as far as customers and how to get to them? Was there a lot of word of mouth between property owners, or did you find that you had to go to trade shows, or and maybe what was different than what you thought?
Yeah. So it wasn't some big surprise. I actually found trade shows is what we did. I think we did 25 shows the first year. We do over 50 shows now a year. It's insane. But that's where the business has come from. And it's been really valuable. Now, I was connected in the multifamily space. I had a lot of relationships. So, but I always say friends don't buy from friends. You think you're like, I'm going to go meet with this guy. He'll buy lockers.
That's
No.
right.
And so it was that was probably one of the most surprising advertising things, that people weren't as
You're on the
willing.
dark side now.
I was on the dark side, and they weren't as willing to, write the contract. I was really surprised by that.
Now, are they coming around now?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I think
Exactly.
I think it's anything new that people are resistant to, and it's change. And as you know, the real estate industry does not move fast. They're not technology forward, and so is everything combined. I got the question so many times: what if you're out of business in a year, and what happens? And I was like, look, we'll put the code into escrow account so that you can get access to it. Like I had to just every challenge that came up, you just find a way to overcome it, and find a solution for it.
Yes. So let's go to the sale.
Yeah.
So you said it happened sooner than you thought. They approach you. Did you already know them, and there was a
No.
relationship? Tell me
So
about how that
it's
came
actually a
about.
great story because when anyone reached out to me, private equity,
Mm-hmm.
VCs, my standard, it was like auto reply, heads down, running the company, growing with our hair on fire,
Yes.
call me back in a year. Everyone. And because I was told early on, don't talk to the VCs and to the private equity unless you're serious about an acquisition or selling your company, because they will tell your competitors, because they'll just be in a conversation like, yeah, I talked to Parcel Pending, and they're thinking about selling the company, and I did not ever want that to be perceived, because I didn't want it to go to customers that, oh yeah, we heard Parcel Pending's
Yes,
trying to sell the
exactly.
company. And so I was very protective over that. And so Neopost sent me an email and said, we'd like to talk to you, we're serious about an acquisition. I'm like, heads down, running the company, hair on fire. And they're like, no, we're serious about this. And I knew they had lockers. They had a brand called Pack City, and I was familiar. They'd come to a couple trade shows. They just couldn't really penetrate the U.S. market, but they they'd had a lot of success in Japan and in France. And so I just dragged my feet. I'm running so fast. I didn't have time. They were like, "Can you get me the NDA?" Yeah, well, I'll get that NDA over. And I just didn't make it a priority. And then finally, it was like, "We're serious, lady. Like, we want to talk to you." All right. So they came out on December 3rd, met with us, and it was probably awful for them, because we sat down at the conference table, like they're literally, here's a cup of coffee, and let me just tell you, it's too soon to sell this company. You're going to have to pay us ridiculous amount of money because we think there's huge growth ahead, but happy to talk with you. So it probably wasn't very settling for an acquisitions guy. And so we just, we worked through it and decided that it was time to go and sell the company. And I was for sure in my head 18 months to 24 months out. And the reason for that is I thought I could get our revenues up higher. I also had to I just felt like our house wasn't clean. We hadn't done our first audit. We hadn't put all the systems in place. We were a scrappy young company, because that's what you do. You run as fast as you can when you're trying to grow a company at the speed. I wanted to get us to 100 million in revenue in 5 years. I didn't get there, but I wanted to get us there. And so that was the chase. It was a race, and the race was on. But they came along, and I don't know, after, the first date, we were kind of like, we like these guys. And I have to say, they are such great people. Really, really nice to work with. All of them are very pleasant.
That's awesome. So two follow-ons to that. So we'll go, under the hood a little bit more. How did you go through the deal process? Because you said you went from term sheet to close. I think you said in 32 days.
Yes.
I've been through these on both sides many times. That's really fast. Were you? You said you hadn't done your first audit, so I can't say sitting here that I can say she was ready.
Yeah.
So how did you get ready? Because that's you didn't have 10 years of history, but you had history.
Yeah. I always built the company knowing I was going to sell it. So everything we did, I told the team, like, look, we have to make sure our books are in order, our house is as clean as we could have it. Again, I don't know that it was as clean as I would have liked it, but the
Couldn't
mentality.
have been too bad. That's impressive.
Yeah, the mentality was do the right thing, make sure that you operate like you're a large corporation, even though you're a small company. And so I think that because of that, we put the infrastructure in place to make sure that when they came to us and said, one of their questions was, because they had a deadline that they wanted to achieve this sale and to announce to the market on January 24th of 19. And so they said, are you committed? Can you get this done in 30 days? Do you have the resources? I'm like, solution finder. Of course I have resources. I'll call in this gal and that guy and this person, and they'll come in and help. And so we populated the data room so fast. They said, our bankers told us that they've never seen a company populate a data room as fast as we populated it. And we just worked day and night. It was sleepless nights. And so beginning that they were in France, we'd have 5 a.m. conference calls. So it was so great I got a clock from our banker, and it said 5 a.m. conference call, and it has the call-in number, because every morning we'd be like, what's the call-in number? Like, how many days after every day you don't know the call-in number? You're just tired. It was intense. And, we couldn't tell the whole company. We only had maybe 5 of us under the tent. In the beginning, it was 2 of us, my president and myself. And then, but it's funny because I'm so transparent with my team that they knew. And so when I announced it, I said, okay, how many of you thought we were selling the company? Out of 150 people, half of them raised their hands. Like, they knew our behavior was different, because you're trying to get this done, and still, by the way, run the company during a transaction like that. It's insane.
So that's amazing. The other question, now you're part of this bigger global company.
Yeah.
How's that been?
I thought that I'd be a great candidate on an acquisition, because I come from corporate America.
Exactly.
And so it really is ideal. It's not the same, I'm not going to lie.
Yes.
And I would say that to the folks. They're now called Quadient. They changed the name from Neopost to Quadient. It's the tough part about it, going into a large organization like this, is they want the huge growth that we've had and continue and committed to having. But they don't know how to really get out of the way, because they're a large corporation and they want to have reporting and decks after deck and meetings after meetings. And while I understand that, because that's what you do when you're running a huge organization, you can't fly fast. And so it really causes some friction, because I really believe in my heart of hearts, our numbers could have been even better than what they are. And our year-over-year growth is pretty good, but it's definitely not hitting the expectations, which bums me out. But it's like, gosh, I need you to get out of the way, but it's like, I ask him. I'm not very political, as they will, and so I just say, like, look, have you ever grown a company 70% year over year? I did for 5 years, 70% every single year. It's a crazy different game than what it is running a large corporation, and so it's hard for people to understand that.
Did you see much change in your team after the acquisition? Because the incentives tend to be pretty clear when you're in startup growth mode. Everybody's in the same boat. You're rowing together. We've got the eye on the prize. And sometimes I see that collective sort of sigh or exhale, and then the pace slows. Or is it, do you chalk it up to the corporate overhead? Is it the just sort of that sigh and exhale, or is it an incentive challenge?
So, I'll tell you, so it was important to me that every employee participated in the stock option program. And so when we sold the company, every employee made money. Even if you'd been there a week, you got a check. Everyone got paid. I accelerated a bunch of people, and that came out of my money, actually. But I could never have done it without these 150 at the time people.
It's a team sport.
Totally. And so I was so passionate about making sure that everyone participated. Also, I could stand up in a meeting and say, look, someone would say, when are we going to get a 401k contribution? I'm like, what? When are you? You're a part owner in this company. You tell me, I've just told you what our financials look like. Do you think it's time for us to do that? And so that I could have that ownership.
That's right.
So we sell the company, everyone gets paid out. And I have had some turnover. My president left, but he was really entrepreneurial. And he and I were more partners in the business, even though he came in later. And so I lost him. And then I've definitely had some turnover, not huge, but I've definitely had some turnover since the acquisition. And some people just, it's not the same place that they, and we were on such a fun race, but the race is now a different race. And so it's not for everybody.
That's right.
So you have to, but also I will tell you that someone gave me this great advice, and they said, what you need at $3 million in staff and in team, especially leadership team, what you need at $3 million is different than what you need at 10 and 30 and 50 and so on. And so a lot of people can't scale with you.
Right. Totally.
And so I think that, some of the turnovers happened because it was just time, because they couldn't go any further. We outgrew them, and we outgrew a lot of people, but I stay connected to all of them. I love and adore all of them still. But it's part of the evolution of a company. If you're steady state, different game. But when you're on the skyrocket rocket ship, it's some people can't go with you.
That's right, and it's tiring. It
Yeah.
is tiring. I've done 10 startups, and they're ones that I've gone from start to finish, and others that I've done either you can call it a tour of duty or seasons. And I think that's okay. And I think it can be hard sometimes as an entrepreneur to say, I feel like they checked out, or they didn't grow, or it can be sad, but it takes all kinds of people through different tours or different seasons of the business. And it's hard always to see ahead what that's like. Yours seems as almost going as predicted as maybe any that I've run across in the last several years. So
I think that's a result of just the planning. I'm
Yeah,
a
that's
planner,
amazing.
and because I had that initial plan, I knew where I was going and what I wanted to accomplish, and I just kept focused on it all the time. All the time, I was just constant focus on, okay, where are we going? Or is this a distraction? Is this where we want to go? And you'd start to get off a little bit and you go, okay, get back. What's the focus?
Sure.
I'm goal driven. I write goals every year. I look at this, I write them in my little brown book. I review them all the time. I tell them to the team, and then I measure myself on how I'm doing on the goals. And so that helps me really stay focused too.
That's awesome. So I have so many, I could sit here for forever. I know we're going to run out of time here shortly. So would you do it again?
Heck yeah, in a minute. It was a blast. Now, I don't think I'm a serial entrepreneur like you. 10? I don't know. I'm tired. I'm really tired. So right now, I think no way in hey could I get going, 10 times over. But another round for sure. For sure. My brain is like, huh.
You're going.
It was too soon. I'm still committed to Quadient, and so I'm not, I'm not doing anything. And, but, I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about different stuff that, what'll be next? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I could end up staying here at Quadient for, another year, another 3 years, 5 years. Who knows? It just depends on what happens.
Sure.
If I'm having fun, I gotta have fun.
Did your vision for Parcel Pending reorient their overall vision and strategy at all, or did you kind of attach into one that they already had pretty strongly?
No, it attached into theirs. They were very clear that they were a mail company, mail services, mail machines, frocking machines, and they were very clear that the mail obviously is dying and packages are growing, and so because they already had lockers, they wanted to really penetrate the U.S. market, and what I say, if you can't beat them, buy them, and so that's what they did, and so now we fit right into what they were trying to accomplish.
Okay, so they haven't had to make major adjustments then since you've joined.
No.
So that seems like a good
Yeah,
strategic
it's a good
fit.
fit. Yeah, it was definitely a
absolutely.
strategic move for sure.
One of the companies I sold several years ago was more of a transformative sale where they needed to really dramatically change their strategy, and we were a key input into helping them change the strategy. That actually ended up being a bit of a challenge because it became our vision meets their vision and negotiating through what is the joint vision need to look like. But it seems like in this case, there was a great fit.
Yeah, it was a good fit.
That one was a little bit tougher.
Like I said, I mean, it was a really good fit. They're really great people. They're smart. They're super smart people, which I enjoy. So that part's really good.
That's great. So what did you learn about yourself that that you maybe didn't? You seem really self-aware. You talked about goals. You talked about your planning. What did you learn about yourself through this that you didn't realize?
That's a good question. Gosh, nothing jumps out at me of what I learned. I mean, I learned so much on this journey, but I don't know about what I learned myself. I'll tell you one of the things that I did learn is how willing people are to help you. How many people in Orange County were willing to help? Like I met from Tritech, which is now part of the SBCD.
SBDC.
Yeah, thank you. They changed it. I can't get it in my brain. And I met this guy, Don Castle, and he was, he was phenomenal. I mean, he was willing to help me. He'd meet me for coffee or for a drink. And I mean, I knew nothing. I really didn't know anything about raising money. I knew nothing really about technology, and I didn't ever start a company before. But other than that, I was the perfect candidate to start Parcel Pending, right? And so, I mean, raise money. We used to jokingly say, at Irvine Company, you just went to the basement and grabbed some cash. And so it was the amount of people that were willing to help me. I had this other guy, Ed Evans, who ended up being an investor and helped me. And he would meet with me day after day after day as I was formulating the plan and getting things launched. And like just so many. The list is so long. And now all these people are in my life. I'm so fortunate. Yeah. So that was the biggest lesson learned, that, people are willing to help. And now I'll do anything I can to help other entrepreneurs on Saturdays, though, and Sundays. Sure. Never on the weekday. I'm too busy. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you, but we got to do it on Saturday.
We've heard it. We've heard it on here. So
That's
be
right.
careful.
No, it's true.
We've got a lot of people in this
People reach out all the time, and
Sure.
I'm happy. You know what? It's my way of giving back
Yes.
because right now I can't go do a bunch of charity work.
Sure.
I'm busy. I'm working day and night. And but if I can help someone else, I'm happy to do it. And if I can go do a speaking engagement where maybe I just inspire one person that has an idea and is afraid. I mean, I'm so lucky. I don't live in fear. I live in fear of nothing. I mean, people are like, you're quitting your fancy job. What if it doesn't make it? 95% of companies fail.
That's right.
I go get a job.
That's right.
And so I just don't live in that conversation. And so it never to me was about, what if it doesn't? It's always about, but it will. It's going to work.
That's right. And I think that's our obligation is to help
For sure.
inspire. I mean, a big part of this whole endeavor with Acclerate OC has been about bringing more of these stories to our community because I've said for a long time, I think we have a lot of latent entrepreneurs here in Orange County. I mean, this is a community that was built by entrepreneurs.
Right.
And you look at some of the people over the last 50 years that have really made Orange County what it is.
Yeah.
We've got a next generation of entrepreneurs that we need to go inspire and support and help.
sure.
And they're going to build different kinds of companies. We need innovative companies like Parcel Pending to birth here from what the foundation that's here. And we need people like you to help, to show them, inspire them, support them, love them, invest in them. And that's what's going to continue to keep Orange County as great as it is. So as just a quick transition from that, how do you think about you've done business now all over the country and now even the world with your new parent. How do you think about Orange County as a place to be an entrepreneur versus maybe other places that you've done some business?
I have to say I've had, like I mentioned earlier, a great experience with the folks in Orange County that have helped me. And, the Tech Coast Angels were unbelievable. Well, probably unbelievable because they really stayed out of my knickers. And, but
That's their ideal, though.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
absolutely.
Well, I'd send like a quarterly update that went out once every 6 or 7 months. It was supposed to be quarterly, but when things are going well, they're going to stay out of your knickers.
Yes.
And I had an amazing lead who became a board member, who's now someone I just love to death and hold in such high regard. And so I really got a ton of support there. So the question around Orange County versus other places, I don't know. I don't know because I wasn't I've never been in Silicon Valley. I've never been in another place. So what I can tell you is that I have felt completely supported if there was a need. So I'm a resourceful person. And so if you say, hey, Lori, you should talk to this guy, I talk to that guy. And if I'm like, oh, use them, that would be good. I have the value there or not, then on to the next. And so I'm really, really resourceful. And I just found so many amazing resources in Orange County. And so I would say to you, it's a great spot for entrepreneurs. And, the work that the Cove has done, there's so many different programs now in Orange County trying to help entrepreneurs, which is so great.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So outside of the business community, what else about Orange County do you most appreciate?
The beach. Let's be clear. Yeah, I love the beach. I grew up in Lakewood, California, Southern California, here next to Long Beach. Lived my whole life there until I became an adult, and then in 2000, when I got the job at the Irvine Company, I moved down south. And so now I'm an Orange County person, and I love it. I think it's a great place to be. The only thing I don't love is that, I sit at a restaurant and I'm getting to conversation 10 o'clock. You look around and you're the only person left at your table. There's not like, it doesn't, you go up to the Silicon Valley and dinner starts at 8 o'clock and it goes on late. And so that's probably the only thing about Orange County that's not great, but I love it here. I would never move. I always tell people are like, but the taxes. I'm like, look, it's the weather tax. I'm totally happy paying the weather tax.
That's what I've said. I've been here 15 years and it's very easy for me to just suck it up.
Suck it up. I love it. It's a great place.
That's right. Well, that's great. Well, Lori, this has been amazing. Paul's given me the high sign over here actually a couple times, and I've just been ignoring him. But I finally,
Sorry,
I know I have to heed it. So the final lap, and what I always like to let guests do is leave a. You've shared a tremendous amount of insight into you and your journey and wisdom. But what piece of advice or wisdom would you love to share with my audience?
I would say there's 2 or 3 things. One is have a plan. Have a plan. You got to have the plan. Number 2 is recognize that you will change over people, and they hire slow, fire fast. It's true. You make their lives better when you let them go, and because they will find the spot where they're successful. So that's a big one.
And they may have been super successful with you in that tour.
Right, exactly. And the last one is just have clarity. If you're clear on where you're going, I talk to so many entrepreneurs. I'm like, how big do you want to grow the company? I don't really know. You got to be clear. What do you want to achieve? I was crystal clear that how much I wanted to sell the company for, how long it was going to be, all of it. Just I had clarity.
Yeah, clearly. And pardon the pun. But Lori, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking us along on this ride and sharing your journey. I mean, great wisdom. It's so obvious that you're an inspiring leader, and I'm sure I would hear that through and through with all the people in your organization as well. Wish you nothing but continued success with Parcel Pending, and you've got an open invite to come back to talk more about that, or once you've figured out if there's maybe a next what's there. And I also want to just thank you for doing your part to accelerate Orange County. Welcome to the family.
Thank you so much. Thanks for.
You've just listened to Accelerate OC. Join our live recordings every Tuesday morning at accelerateoc.com, or listen, like, and share anytime from your favorite podcast spot. Let's accelerate OC together.
Same for 6 months, and the same thing goes for background checks. In a time when so much outdated information is being passed around, it's good to know that People G2 offers something different. At People G2, we provide today's intelligence, not yesterday's news. Our value-added approach offers you a fully FCRA-compliant solution that includes up-to-the-minute information. By combining industry-leading technology with old-school human investigation, People G2 is able to give you information that is accurate right now, delivered quickly to our online system, or integrated with your HR system. So ask yourself, are you comfortable working with old news, or are you ready for a different kind of background check company? Visit peopleg2.com or call 800-630-2880. That's 800-630-2880 or peopleg2.com.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time for another episode of Driven by Design, the only show that shows you the future of automotive design and transportation in general, with our driven transportation chief, our designer-in-chief, Brian Thompson. Hey, Brian.
Hello. You can't see me, but I'm dancing around to my own music.
That is pretty cool. That is a pretty cool opening thing there. I gotta give you that.
I hope it gets people up and moving.
It does. It gets me up moving. Well, because it's about moving. It's about what drives you these days here. Well, we're for those that are listening in the future, this is a podcast we're doing at the end of 2019. We're going to do, like we always do at this time of year, at the end of the year, look back at the stories that drove us maybe crazy, or drove us to distraction, or drove us to be interested. And
the new frontiers.
Yes. And then in the second half, we're going to do a two-parter again. Here we seem to specialize in two-parters on this show. We'll take a look at, we'll have him put on his Karnak. I'm dating myself. Nobody remembers Johnny Carson and Karnak here. His who's a modern equivalent? Who predicts the future? Whoever it is going to put on his turban and look into his crystal ball and see if he can't do it, because not only is he guessing because he's an educated person in this field, he's got the right to guess, he's working on it. That's what's bizarre about your industry. You know, you're working on the future today. So we'll talk about some of that to the extent you can share it. But let's start with, I wrote up a whole bunch of questions, and I'm sure there's some other ones you want to talk about as well. But let me start off by saying, let's look at, to me, two or three of the stories that captivated me, that drove me this year. One was one that, and for those who don't know or don't remember, I'm a big fan of transportation. I grew up in Detroit, in the belly of the beast. My dad was an executive for Chrysler Corporation. Everybody on my block, every kid I knew at school, their father had something to do with the car business. I mean, it was an industry town. It was the water we swam in. It was like being up in Hollywood or something. Everybody was immersed in that industry. And at that time, we used to say that not only was it, maybe that was just our fantasy, but not only was it a big deal to most people, and particularly to us, what color the car, what was the name of the car, what was coming out. We were really into this stuff, probably even more than the public was. But 20%, 1 out of 5 jobs, they used to say, had something to do with transportation in this country. You think it's still that big? Is this still an industry that not only drives our imagination, but drives our economy?
Well, I mean, the industry is growing from what, the concept of what a car is changing, right? So I don't know statistical numbers, but, you think about every aspect of transportation now, that's the ride shares to those sort of litter economies of the little scooters and things like that.
The litter economy, yeah, exactly. The throwaway version of transportation, yeah.
And, you see them all over, the little birds and limes and stuff, but they're kind of like litter, but they're, that'll be a great thing to
send all your comments to Brian Thompson. I didn't call these little things litter here. You can, all the people who are going to get angry and all the PR people that want to be on the show to refute that.
Economy. I think we coined that on this show.
I think you did. Well, it's true that we have a litter economy. We just litter the world with these things. We throw them away.
It's interesting, though, because I noticed the bikes that are, like wheels, they don't get tossed about. It's like, I think there's something.
You've said that before, and I never really thought about it, but you're right. When people, when they get a rental bike, Maybe it's because it's bigger and more substantial. But you think what? It goes back to our childhood and how important that bike was to us?
When we got on a bike when we were kids, we were so excited for Christmas to get a bike, and then when you got done with it, you put the kickstand down, and you left it standing there. And a scooter, you typically would lean it against something or put it in the garage, if you had one. But I think there's a sort of a little ritual of putting the kickstand down that is so ingrained in people that they just do it. And so when you see those little wheels bikes, they're standing, they're not thrown over. And so that's it's kind of a nice little thing.
Well, here's a spoiler alert. We haven't confirmed the date, but we confirmed his appearance this past week. Don DeCostanza, you don't even know this is going to be on your show. Chief Executive Officer and the creator of Pedigo electric bikes. I believe they're the largest electric bike manufacturer in the or dealer, whatever company in the world, and they're based here in Orange County. And he's been on a couple of our shows and would love to come on and talk about, because he's got some really ideas about how bikes, how transportation is changing, and bikes in particular have evolved and changed. So, all right, so again, I think this is still, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm still the kid of my Detroit days, but I think cars and transportation are still a big deal, even more so for Americans than for anybody else. It's the mythology of freedom. It's the mythology of the open road. It's the mythology of power and personal empowerment and all that. Talk about that. Is that still? Do we still feel that in our veins, or am I just an old guy mythologizing about the Old West?
American dream. It's really a part of the American dream that you can own a car. I mean, Route 66 is so ingrained in our culture, especially in the West Coast in California. That's why so many of the car studios moved out here. But I think people's desires and needs, those typically don't change drastically as much as the way that we meet them. So as we sort of are on this cutting edge of this autonomous driving technology, for a while it's going to be very exciting. It's going to be very sort of messy as it gets integrated, and you're going to hear a lot of I don't want them to take my steering wheel. But that's not really what's happening, right? It's like the idea of commuting and sitting for a long duration in just rush hour traffic, that will go away, and that'll be handled by the AI. But I think for a long time to come, the idea of driving a car, of one that you have perception of control of, we can discuss what perception of control is more deeply, but the idea that you get to feel the steering wheel in your hand.
We're going to get that esoteric here. What is control? Who is in control? Are we in control of anything these days, Aaron?
Well, think about this. Okay, so people that will often say, I'd never drive an autonomous car, they already have one. I mean, ABS is an autonomous system. It's impossible for a human being to put on the brakes and pulsate them as quickly as an ABS system. At that point, once you put on the brakes, you're just a director of operations. You're telling the car, I need to stop, and I need to stop right now. And the car itself is the one doing the stopping. There's no mechanical connection between you and the brakes.
Yeah.
And so that is so right there.
And shifting, we did that. I mean, I was of that generation where we went from having to shift ourselves to automatic transmission.
I was in a car the other day that had a manual transmission, and I forgot to put in the clutch, and the damn car put the clutch in for me. Wait a minute.
Who's the
man behind the curtain here doing the work?
Who's in control after all here?
It's just placating me now.
Yeah, it's pretending that I'm in control here. And then, and my wife was a big fan of. She gave hers up reluctantly. She finally gave up because it was almost impossible to find cars with a stick shift version. But she liked that. She said, she could. She had the fantasy that she was in control, that she could get better gas mileage and all this other thing. I said, oh, come on. Those been proven a long time ago. These computers can do it faster and better than we can here.
But it's also, but I don't even think it's really about, I mean, that's what people tell themselves it's about.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll rationalize it, but it's really about the feeling.
The feeling, yes.
Though I work on cars for the next 10, 20 years, I drive a Fiat 500 Abarth that has a 5-speed manual with a mechanical, shifter. And
you're another one of those crazy ones.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the performance of the vehicle, although I love how fast it is. But it's that feeling of shifting. It just gives me such a nice feeling of satisfaction.
And the sound.
Yeah, and and I drive different in that car than in some of my vintage, 80s Japanese cars where you sort of hold on with two fingers to the steering wheel and one pinky up. But the Fiat, I'm weaving in. I'm like, who is this guy? I'm weaving in and out of traffic I'm in a hurry, to go to the same place that I never really need to get to that quickly.
Well, and I used to tell her all the time, she'd say, but you have more control over the vehicle. I said, why don't we go back to the days when we had to do hand cranks? There wasn't a battery, and you had to jump the spark yourself here. You want how much do you want to be in control? How much do you want to initiate on all this stuff here?
But I would ask her to extrapolate on that feeling of being in control. I think when people say those words, be in control, they're really talking about a feeling. They're talking about a feeling in your stomach, or a feeling in your hands, or a visceral emotional reaction. And those are the words we use to describe those. When people say I bought my car for the fuel economy, or they rationalize it, what they're really talking about is an emotion that's sort of hidden underneath these logical terms we'll use. Because do we really have control of a car with ABS and traction control and every other system that's sort of waiting and ready to take over for us? Not really. It's all there ready, but it's that feeling. It's that feeling that makes you feel that visceral fun. I love driving. That is so important to driving, and I think certainly designers like me, I want to protect that and keep that going into the future as the sort of ride-share, commuting, autonomous driving sort of takes over.
That's going to be part 2. I'm going to question whether or not we're going to have that same feeling for our vehicles, that same anthropomorphic, is that the right word, where they feel like they're human, or they're an extension of us, if it's just a box, a robot that picks it up. But we'll keep that for the second part. All right, so let me get from out there, let's get some, for us car guys out there, let's get some emotion. Let's announce some sad passings. You know how, like at the Academy Awards, they announce everybody who died this year? I want to announce some things that died this year in transportation. One of which, my father's already passed away. He's already dead. But if he wasn't, he would have killed him. Which is the death of the passenger vehicle. The sedan. The sedan. The 2-door, 4-door car that was the bread and butter of every manufacturer. It was every house had one, and then they started chipping away at with these crossover utility vehicles, 5th door, tailgate stuff that started changing its feeling and stuff. And finally, was it Fiat this year? He finally threw in the towel. I think Ford as well said, we quit. We're not going to make them anymore.
Well, think about what driving is and what driving's been. Okay, so first we had horses and carriages, right? And those weren't sedans. And then, you evolve into sort of this a horse and carriage with a trunk on the back. And that's what sort of begat the sedan look, right? This 3-box, we call it 3-box, a hood, a cabin, and a trunk. And that evolved in the 40s to really those vehicles in the 30s and 40s that everybody drove. Those were the modern day SUVs. If you think about it, they were proportionally crossovers because they had big.
How so? I don't know. You lost me on that one here. Okay.
Silhouette.
The look of it. Okay.
Yeah, with the actual package that people sat in.
Right.
It's very similar to a modern day, Ford Escape or Explorer or,
Because
Fiat.
they had that kind of bubble, that kind of raised roof kind of look to them here. They weren't low and sleek. They were tall, and
they were designed for roads that were not finished like today's roads, right? So they really had to be living sort of as an urban off-road vehicle.
Yeah.
So as
people forget that the Model T, part of its popularity certainly was the price, but the other thing is that it could go through ruts, and it still can. I've seen people drive these things over giant ruts and holes and everything because there were dirt roads that weren't smooth and paved. So it had to be with the giant balloon tires.
As those roads sort of evolved and cleaned up, you got cars that were lower slung and had, the long, getting to the 50s with the jet age and the, the space age and being fired by rocket ships. Everything's low and slung low and got these wide proportions and stuff.
And big fins. Come on, don't forget the big fins. I loved all that.
But then what came out of that? The station wagon, right? So bam, that need is, so the need, if you look at the history of car design, the need kind of doesn't change. People need to move people and move their stuff.
Right.
So like, as the 60s came, or even in the 50s, 60s, the family station wagon came, right? Well, the family station wagon was, the great Route 66, go camping, go on trips with your loved ones, bench seats, you can put your arm around your wife, it's very family oriented.
Right.
Until the station wagon became passé, and then
kids, you could put because you had 3 rows now. You could that trunk went away, and we could sit in the trunk. Basically, you could store
Face
stuff in it, or you could face backwards and sit in the trunk.
Oh my God, how many memories! I remember riding
love
my
that.
aunt's Chevrolet. Was it a Caprice wagon, Impala maybe, lower model, and we, just how many kids have that memory of fighting with each other and then making faces at the car behind you and throwing things out the window,
right?
Because ours had like a roll down window, you could throw stuff at people.
Yeah,
terrible.
And get them to honk or something, and get them like honk for anything. Yeah,
or try to get them to swerve, which is what we were trying to do.
You terrorists. Okay.
Yeah, but then the wagon, if you will,
went away,
lost its cachet, and then what came out in '84, Chrysler's minivan.
Yeah,
same thing, but now it's in a compact minivan, but it's a place to put your stuff and things. Minivan,
but the doors slid open instead of flung open. They were giant, and they were easier to put. You could put more stuff in it. It was a big box, and it was so well engineered, so well designed. I'll say designed first and then engineered, that you could stow it under and over and around, and they'd show you the endless configurations, remove the seats, and do all sorts of stuff. It was the first utility vehicle that was created.
Yeah, and so that innovation gave it a cutting-edge feeling. And what was out of style at that moment? The station wagon.
Oh.
Nobody wants to be seen in the station wagon.
Nobody.
Right? And then same thing happened to the minivan. The minivan goes along; it's a cutting edge. When Chrysler came out with the Voyager and the Caravan, it was a big deal until everybody had one, and everybody's mom drove one,
right?
And everybody associated that with
not cool.
Not cool.
Right.
Right. And then what came out? The SUV, which is the same thing. It's just now we're going back to the 40s. It's a tall vehicle with large tires, but you're still moving and their stuff. And then the SUV was replaced by the crossover.
Yeah, which is
But if you look at it, on all the history of it, it's all the same thing. It's just different proportions of the same thing.
But what has disappeared is the old passenger 4-seat car, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 2 rows, and mom and dad in the front, kids in the back, or whatever. Everybody had to have it was a car strictly for passengers. You might try and stuff things in the trunk. You might try and stick more people in it, but it was there to move passengers around. It wasn't a truck, and it wasn't a catch-all that had all these other things to it. Why did my dad died about 6 years ago. He could never understand the appeal of trucks, minivans, and later SUVs. He just couldn't get that.
Right. Well, that makes sense because of the generational association that we have with those things, and just like.
And at the upper end, you still have it's. Keep in mind it's only the passenger vehicle from the midsize down that disappeared. There's no demise of the Mercedes-Benz and the BMWs and
Teslas. You could argue that Tesla's a hatchback, but so the interesting thing with that is that the sedan actually didn't go away. If you think about what the sedan was a ladder frame chassis with a body on it that was essentially a truck.
A ladder frame, because it literally looked like a ladder when it did before it had the body on it. Right.
So when you have in automotive, there's a ladder frame, and then there's a unibody, and then there's space frame. But we don't need to go into all those. Basically, ladder frame is a frame. It's like a cake with a body on top of it, right?
Right.
That's the body, and the body comes off, and it's not part of the structure.
Right.
But what stayed in the market that swallowed up the sedan? It's not the crossover, it's not the SUV, it's the American truck.
Yes.
So we still have sedans. The cabin got bigger, and the bed got smaller. So if you really look at a modern day Ford F-150 or a Chevy truck, Dodge. I mean, even
Ram.
Heck, the Nissan Titan was the first vehicle I worked on when I got out of college. We made that cabin so big that the A-pillars were almost touched down at the wheels. And if you really think about it, that's the modern day American sedan. All of the creature comforts that started to appear in the truck, the trunk is just basically the bed. The proportions are all there. So I would argue that the American sedan is still alive and well. It just looks like a truck now.
Interesting you say that. So yeah, I've never thought about that. I'm gonna have to go back and think about it but you're right. I mean, it's the inside of the truck is there. The truck was designed to carry heavy stuff, and there's some appeal. But 99% of the people I know that have a truck don't carry anything but themselves. It is, in that sense, much more of a passenger vehicle than it is hauling stuff.
Yeah, you use
around.
it. I know. I just got a truck. I just got a Nissan Hardbody from 1988, and it's like I had to have it because it was designed by the guys we were talking about last week, Jerry Hirschberg and Tom Temple and all those guys, and really talented truck. And guys, and that truck is so beautiful. I had to have it. Now I'm like riding around. I'm like, oh, I'm a truck guy. Well,
When did this happen?
I've designed trucks, but I didn't ever really think I'd ever own one.
So truck guys are just the modern equivalent of the sedan. I've never thought of interesting idea. Okay, so that I'm not going to cry too much for the demise of the sedan. It lives on in today's truck. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can even have your bench seat in a truck. So yeah.
All right, so that was one, the demise of the passenger vehicle, but you're saying it just evolved into something else, the trucks. The minivan turned into the SUV, turned into the crossover, this multi-purpose, multi-utility 5-door thing. Will we ever see more than 5 doors or less than 3 doors? 2 doors?
I think, as we get into the future where,
will the whole lid just pop up and we'll step into it like some of those futuristic cars, the whole body flips up and you sit down in it, or?
I would direct people to, look at the history of horse and buggy, and imagine the horseless carriage still being a horseless carriage, but now that the horse will become the artificial intelligence. Right. So these kind of upright proportions of the carriages, if you think of like the Wells Fargo stagecoach kind of thing, there's some hints about the future in those. Big wheels, something you can stand in, something you can walk right in.
Something you can stand in. I never thought of it. So this isn't the transportation doesn't have to be on your butt. You might lay in it. You might stand in it. You might do other things than just sit in it.
People in the future will look, when they get into vehicles that have this sort of carriage seating and tall space, if they got into a modern day, say like S-Class Mercedes and had to crane their neck the way you do to get in that back seat, they will say like, why were people accepting this odd contortionist position you have to get into a car? And it's because we normalize what we feel comfortable with, what becomes fashionable. Yeah. But we do normalize something. Even I have an 85 Celica GTS convertible, and when I get in that car, I have to sit down. And it feels so strange to me because no car you sit down, even my little Fiat, my modern one, you slide right in the H point, which is your H point, slides right into the seat. Whereas that Celica, it's like, oh wow, I can't believe everybody used to just fall into their cars. It's so hard to get out of. Yeah. Also, it could be that I'm 45 now. So it's hard.
Well, and they had kind of a bucket. I'm old enough to remember the step down designs of Packards and those things where you step down. You stepped over a thing and then down into it. It had it felt like a bucket, right? It felt like a well. All right, so we've talked about that a little bit. Now here's the one that and this is going to lead us into the next discussion. So we'll end this first half with I cried about the passenger vehicle, but you cheered me up. Exactly, and we talked about how we're just left with trucks and SUVs or whatever they're called now. The question I have is colors and shapes. Why have we gotten so unimaginative in colors and shapes? My wife and I were laughing about this the other day. You got me thinking about this stuff now. We're driving down the road, and it seems like all the cars are white, black, or some kind of gray, silver, whatever. With
grayish. We like to call it
grayish. With a handful of red just to stand on. No pinks, no purples, no greens anymore, blues hardly any. All of that stuff's gone. Brown,
Well, we need Brenda Parkenbach, our guest that we had earlier, the Nissan color and material designer for Nissan for all those years, who did Xterra yellow and really pushed things like shocked blue on Xterra, which people don't remember shocked blue, but they remember yellow Xterra. Shock blue was like a Smurf blue, but it was a secondary color for Xterra. She really pushed hard for colors. I think two answers to that of why do we go to grayish? Grayish is basically some nebulous place between tan and gray, right? With metallic thrown in to make it fancy. Right. But why are we there? And there's a lot of different answers to that question, but the biggest one I think is the one that's about to change, which is people lease vehicles, or they buy them for a shorter amount of times than they used to, and they're thinking so much more about resale value. How can I move this car once I get out of this lease? Like the dealer, how can I sell this car once this person gets out of the lease? So they'll order cars that are more like that. People who are buying cars will buy them for a lesser amount of time, and so they'll want to be able to get rid of it, right? So they're not thinking about their personal preference. They're thinking about sort of a market blandness that doesn't offend anybody.
But that's the opposite of what's happened in our culture. We've gone from 3 channels to 3 million cable channels to 3 zillion YouTube channels. We've gone from radio, which had top 20, top 40,
right,
to Pandora with endless, or Spotify, endless choices. Endless choices is the modern mantra, and yet in cars we've gone back to you can have any color you want as long as it's black. Henry Ford's day.
Yeah. Well, and in some ways the car industry leads, and in some ways it takes its cues from other industries a few years behind. But what I would say is that you hit it right on the head. Endless choice is definitely something I see coming back into this industry. And when I say, and more than choice, whereas choice is, let's say, customization, and you can customize your news feed,
right.
But a real endless choice is personalization. Personalization is different than customization. Customization is selecting from a menu. Personalization is you're the only one that has it.
I like that.
And I think with all of these manufacturing techniques that are coming into the norm, everything from 3D printing to, major sophisticated, I won't go into it because it's like a downfall of like processes, but like every manufacturing technique that is going to make it possible for low run small numbers production to be profitable is going to mean that people will be able to imagine and personalize their own vehicle or their own ride experience, if you can imagine that. So go beyond color, go into smart skins or smart glass, where the color or the content on the car changes itself. So you can imagine a car driving down the road with graphics changing all the time.
Sort of like those tintable glasses, you go out in the sun and they tint for you or something, and then they go back
but imagine with actual live graphics in them, like your computer monitor.
You're blowing my mind here.
Yeah, think very Minority Report. That stuff is becoming, very, very near future. And I think the biggest in this idea of commitment, which is what causes people to make conservative choices, that sort of disappears when you can change the vehicle like a chameleon for the ride you're about to get in.
Yeah.
So let's say that you're
just that ride today. I want to be purple and pink and wild, and I want flames on the side here. Yeah.
Yeah, and you may not even make this choice consciously.
It may be a reaction to your mood, like those old mood rings of the 70s or 80s or something here.
Yeah, anticipatory vehicles. And if you think about like vehicles.
Anticipatory vehicle. How would you like to feel today, Brian?
Yeah, but less creepy. More like, like in the way that when you do put on a shirt in the morning, it's something that you feel. The car that sort of creates an ambient temperature and an experience for you that you can correct. I think that the vision of the future where the car's doing a lot of talking and like harping at you, like in the sort of 80s version of the future where the coolest thing was like a Datsun Maxima that said like left door is open.
Yeah. It's
less that, and it's more about creating the right temperature, the right fragrance, the right the color light that you like.
Wow.
But very naturally. Less of the sort of mechanical, like that creeps me out. There's a thing they call the uncanny valley, which we could spend a whole show on. Uncanny valley is that space.
We should do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that space. Real quick, it's that space between a real live object and a computer. And at some point the computer gets a little closer to becoming alive and human, to the point where we anthropomorphize it, like a car that we give a name to, or any sort of like pet object that we love and we imbue it with a
like Knight Rider and Kit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Kit really approached Uncanny Valley. So Uncanny Valley is that moment of creepiness when it goes too far from us adding our own anthropomorphic values to it coming at us with something that definitely does not feel a lot. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel human. It feels creepy. That's if you put it on a belt, like on a curve, that's the valley.
For me, it started when it would beep if I didn't connect my seatbelt here. It would endlessly ding and like enough. And I'm arguing, stop it already. All right, I'll put my seatbelt on. Yeah.
Or, like maybe some of the early Avatar movies. Avatar was amazing, right? But there's some of those moments like when the graphics weren't right and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel that's the uncanny valley when you look at it and you don't believe it, but there's something triggers in your mind to make you feel off versus something that just feels naturally alive. You sort of welcome it and you accept it versus reject it. And that's the trick for a designer, to sort of find their way in and out of that valley without creeping people out.
Well, my way is to find a way out of this conversation without pissing people off here, because you're into something really cool. Let's stick around, folks, because we're going to do part 2, and we're going to get into this futuristic stuff of the we're enter that creepy valley here and walk into the future and see if we can creep you out even more here.
Get out of it. All right.
You've been listening to a quick look back this year as we finish the first season of Driven by Design right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.
Imagine what it would feel like to lose everything. Your job, your home, your family, your dignity. This has happened to thousands of the men, women, veterans, and young adults we serve at Working Wardrobes. What do we do to help? We provide career development services, life skills workshops, job skills training. We provide the perfect interview outfit, and we get clients placed in jobs. Call Working Wardrobes, 714-210-2460. Donate, volunteer, invest, hire.
Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of OC Spotlight, the one show that takes a look at the most incredible people doing the most amazing things right here in our own OC backyard. And this one has got me excited today, folks. Not that the other ones don't, but this is one that's near and dear to my heart. We have the folks in